today. We appreciate all of you being here, and I want to say we appreciate all of the folks that are here today to participate in this news conference. I'm here with my colleagues, Chairman Charles Perry of Lubbock, Representative Donna Howard of Travis County, and the Travis County District Attorney Margaret Moore, and all of these supporters that join us to showcase the tremendous work that sexual assault survivors and their advocates are doing to reform our attitudes, our policies, and our laws regarding sexual assault. I'm incredibly grateful for their courage and their dedication, and I'm very optimistic about the progress that we're going to make during this legislative session as a result. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rose Luna, the CEO of the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, and we'll have a number of people that are advocates for survivors that will participate in this news conference. So thank you. Come on up.
Thank you. I'm old enough to remember Senator Watson as the wonderful mayor of Austin. So everybody is there. So I'm glad that you're here doing wonderful things at the Capitol. A few months ago, I had a meeting with a couple of leaders, local leaders that are doing this work. And they're leaders that I admire. They are leaders who were doing this work for over 30 years. I've been doing it for about 16. And the one thing they said that felt very harsh, but it's the truth, is that they have seen the needle move in the area of domestic violence. They've seen it move in a positive direction. Now, are we where we need to be? No, we're not with domestic violence. But the needle has at least shifted in the right way. They've also seen the needle move in regards to child sexual assault, again, in the right direction. But when it comes to adult sexual assault, they have not seen the needle move. And as a matter of fact, if it's moved the wrong way. So sexual assault is a highly prevalent crime here in Texas. 1 in 5 men, 2 in 5 women will find themselves victim at some point in their lifetime of sexual violence. It is very highly nuanced, and there's a lot of misconception and misunderstanding around adult non-stranger sexual assault. So this issue requires the political will of elected officials. It requires the political will of leaders across the state of Texas and at the local level. I'd like to say that I think we're starting to see that movement happen with the base budget here at the 86th legislature. We see over $7 million targeted for sexual assault for rape crisis centers, and in particular, the Senate budget has $7.5 million for rape crisis centers, and thanks to Senator Jane Nelson, we have an additional $1 million for the sexual assault nurse examiner access across this vast, enormous state of Texas. Also, I'd like to say that leadership at the local level is strong. We have local leaders at the rape crisis centers who are balancing infrastructure challenges along with waiting lists and the demand for services on a shoestring budget. They are your resident experts. They are the experts in your backyard. So TASA stands ready with them to assist the state in addressing this horrific crime. Also, what I'd like to say is I would like to give my deepest gratitude to all the victims who come forward, to all survivors who come forward and create this change. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here celebrating this bipartisan, survivor-centered bills to address the crime of sexual assault here at the Texas State Capitol. So thank you all for that.
Megan? Now we're going to hear from Megan Westmore of SAFE.
Good morning, everyone. Sexual assault is an epidemic in our nation and in Texas, but sadly the entire response system for this crime is desperately under-resourced. As the Rape Crisis Center for Travis County, the SAFE Alliance provides advocacy, forensic exams, counseling, legal support, and much more for hundreds of sexual assault and rape survivors each year. If you or someone you know has been raped or sexually assaulted, please contact us at safeaustin.org. I worked as a sexual assault victim advocate for several years and got to witness firsthand both the devastating consequences of rape as well as the immense courage of survivors who tell their stories. One of the most humbling parts of my experience was survivors telling me over and over again that the main reason they decided to report to law enforcement was because they didn't want their perpetrator to hurt someone else. Even in the face of a society that often ignores sexual assault survivors or blames them for their crimes, these incredible humans were interested in helping others, in protecting others. And now locally and across the country, we see a movement building to stand behind sexual assault survivors and to fix the systems that were designed to address this crime. There are many concrete steps we can take to better support sexual assault survivors, and SAFE is pleased to have had the opportunity to work with Senator Watson on specific legislation. Let me tell you about some of the bills. As TASA just discussed, legislation to increase resources to rape crisis centers such as SAFE is so imperative. Chairwoman Nelson and Chairman Zerwas have added much needed investments into the budget for rape crisis center services and for rape kit backlogs. This funding is so important to eliminate wait lists for victim services and to help address and prevent rape kit backlogs. Chairwoman Nelson has also filed SB 71 to establish a statewide telehealth system for rape kit exams. This is crucial as there's a shortage of forensic nurses across the state, and particularly in rural areas, it can be extremely difficult for survivors to find a qualified medical professional to collect evidence. The issue of backlogged rape kits is complex and more than funding is required. Representatives Nayave, Mijares, Howard, and Senator Watson are working on several bills to improve rape kit collection and testing processes. These bills ensure that rape kits are tested and quickly compared to law enforcement databases, and that we are ensuring survivors are informed and we're respecting their wishes at every step of the process. SAFE is also encouraged by several bills that have been filed to address outdated laws. The laws that define our crimes make it difficult for prosecutors to obtain justice for sexual assault survivors. They need to be updated to fully account for the different types of sexual assault we see. Senator Watson filed SB 584 to update the definition of consent to cover obvious gaps when consent is lacking. For example, our criminal law should make clear that consent is lacking if the victim is too intoxicated to consent, if a victim withdraws consent and the actor persists, and if a caretaker exploits a client's dependency on the perpetrator. This is especially important for individuals with disabilities who are sexually assaulted at rates higher than individuals without disabilities. Senator Perry and Representative Moody filed SB 194 and HB 309 to create the offense of indecent assault. Without this offense, groping is often classified as assault, which does not adequately reflect the nature of the offense. Finally, one more piece of legislation I would like to highlight is SB 586 by Senator Watson and HB 282 by Representative Nayave, which would improve the training peace officers receive on trauma-informed responses to sexual assault survivors. If a survivor decides to report to law enforcement, often the first person they interact with is not a dedicated sex crimes detective or a specialist, but rather an officer on patrol. A survivor's first interaction with law enforcement is so crucial because based on how that interaction goes, they may or may not feel safe to continue with the criminal investigation and prosecution. And it is therefore imperative that all peace officers receive adequate training to interact with these victims. There are many other important bills that have been filed this session to address the needs of sexual assault survivors, and we are hopeful that with bipartisan support, our legislature can take significant steps to improve sexual assault outcomes in Texas. SAFE would like to thank Senator Watson and the other legislators for their important work on this topic. And more than anything, we would like to thank the innumerable sexual assault survivors who have bravely told their stories and who have waited far too long for justice. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Ashka, and I apologize if I mispronounce. By the way, we've just been joined by Chairman Zerwas, and we appreciate him being here. Ashka Digay. Ashka, Ashka is with It's On Us. Please come up, Ashka.
Thank you, Senator Watson, and good morning. My name is Ashka Digay, and I'm an officer with It's On Us at UT Austin. For the past couple semesters, our organization has been working to provide support for survivors of sexual assault on our campus. As an advocate, I spoke to over 30 complainants, respondents, and close friends of people who have been involved in Title IX investigations to get feedback on the process. Every person I spoke to had a complaint about the disappointing experience they had dealing with Title IX, university administration, or their professors. These bills focus a lot on prevention and collecting information immediately after the incident of sexual assault, which is fantastic. I would like to thank Senator Watson for devoting his time to this cause and for making sexual assault a bipartisan legislative priority in Texas. We really appreciate this opportunity to have survivors' voices heard, and that's what we at It's On Us want to promote on our campus too. Protecting survivors' autonomy is vital to their recovery process, and no individual should be pressured into an investigation if that's not what they feel is best for their own healing. Several survivors I've spoken to also raised concerns about the mandatory reporting policy at UT Austin and felt that it added to their stress by pushing them into a process that they weren't ready for. Furthermore, students who do end up participating in a Title IX investigation often aren't met with the resources or accommodations that they need. One of the most shocking issues we identified through the feedback we got from survivors was that so many of them are struggling to keep up with their schoolwork as a result of their assault and Title IX investigation. According to a study published in the Journal of College Student Retention, survivors are more susceptible to dropping out of school or developing mental illnesses and eating disorders. It's not acceptable for a system that has already failed to protect its students to further harm them by leaving them to navigate their undergraduate years without adequate support. Right now, UT Austin does grant academic accommodations to students participating in a Title IX investigation, but leaves it to individual professors' discretion to decide how those accommodations may be carried out. A startling story I heard through my work with It's On Us was about a woman who was sexually assaulted and is currently in the process of her Title IX hearings. A notice was sent out to her instructors last semester, requesting that they excuse her absences as she was under immense stress, reliving her trauma in those Title IX hearings. One of her professors, after discussing her situation with colleagues in the department, which is a direct violation of confidentiality, informed her that she would fail the course that semester due to her absences. The system has checked all the boxes and has all the resources in place, but is failing to deliver them effectively. In this system, it is possible for intelligent individuals to fail courses because of somebody else's actions. Senator Watson's SB 585 sets up protocols for schools to follow that are survivor-centered and that assure survivors will be treated appropriately. This bill is a step in the right direction to give survivors their voices back, and I thank Senator Watson for fighting it. Thank you.
Thank you. From Deeds Not Words, Tatum Zico.
Thank you, Senator. Hello, my name is Tatum Zico. I'm a senior at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm the former president of UT's chapter of Not on My Campus, and I'm currently president of UT's chapter of Deeds, a project created by Wendy Davis's nonprofit Deeds Not Words. My relationship with Title IX and sexual assault has been multi-layered. Every freshman remembers clicking through the mandatory PowerPoint that explains sexual violence and prevention in blanket terms. But that's about all I remember about that PowerPoint. Its intentions were good, but it didn't do enough to prevent a fraternity member from jugging half of my pledge class 2 weeks later. 2 weeks into my freshman year was the first time I recommended Title IX to a friend, but it certainly was not the last. I'm lucky to have such a strong relationship with Title IX through my work as an advocate, because I've never felt more worried about the status of Title IX as I do now with the regressive proposals from the Department of Education. The federal government has decided that survivors' voices, my story, my friends' stories, are not as important as the voices of those that have been falsely accused. The Department of Education decided that campuses should not be held accountable for assaults that happen off campus. According to the Institute of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, 87% of unwanted sexual contact incidents occurred off campus. This is for UT Austin alone. Has history taught us nothing? Did the continuous Baylor scandal teach us nothing? The federal government will fail survivors if they turn a blind eye to assaults that happen off campus. We've barely gotten better at teaching our students about consent since that PowerPoint when I was a freshman. I can't tell you how many friends I've sat with and explained where to get a state exam done. I lost count years ago, and some of those friends still haven't heard anything about those exams. I wish I had a number of how many times I would come home from class at my wit's end because of the amount of stories I'd heard that day. One day, 5 people came to me separately seeking advice and help. I'm 21 years old, I'm a student. This should not be my reality. It should not be my job to take care of these survivors while the Department of Education continues to tell us that the 2% of false accusations deserve more help than my 1 in 5 women at UT and 1 in 20 men. We deserve better from our government than being swept under the rug. Now let me check my privilege for a moment and say that I'm up here as an able-bodied middle-class white woman. Sexual assault is twice as likely to happen to somebody with a disability. Twice. If the federal government is going to pretend like it isn't happening to us, at least our Texas government will listen. Senator Watson's Senate Bill 585 to create a Texas 9 will unite Texas systems in protecting survivors as they go through investigations of their assault. Sexual assault happens to every political ideology. While I worry for the actions of the Department of Education is taking against Title IX, I am glad to know we have state senators like Senator Watson working across the aisle on these bills and involving student voices in the process. My time at UT will come to an end in May, and in that time, I will hear countless more survivor stories. I will continue to fiercely protect those voices and those stories, and I hope the Texas legislature will too.
Next, we'll hear from Rhea Shaheen, a survivor and a student advocate. Rhea.
Hi, my name is Rhea Shahane, and I'm a senior at the University of Texas. I had a very stereotypical Texan childhood. I lived in a small West Texas town. My friend drove trucks. Friday night football was religion. And yes, we even had people ride a tractor to school once or twice. My parents, on the other hand, immigrated to America from India, and I even lived there for a few years when I was younger. So it's no surprise that from a young age, I learned the importance of mastering the balancing act of being raised in these two cultures. Now, there are a lot of things that are different about being raised by South Asian parents, and one of them was we never talked about sex. The topic of physical intimacy or even contraceptives never came up. It was like there was a taboo surrounding the issue. And it was nothing against my parents, that's just how our culture was. So 1 year ago when I was assaulted, I felt like I'd lost my voice, but I was not alone. While advocates have made serious strides in the fight against sexual violence at the local, national, and state level, we still exclude the voices and experiences of people of color. But sexual violence is not a race issue. It transcends race, it transcends culture, and it transcends identity. That is why I'm so grateful to Senator Watson and our other representatives for taking the time to put forward bipartisan legislation to tackle this issue. I've had so many conversations with individuals from different groups where people have told me that they do not believe their opinions matter because this is, and I quote, a white person issue. That's not the case at all. According to the Asian Family Services of Austin, 41 to 60% of Asian and Pacific Islander women, also known as the API community, report experiencing physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. And as horrifying as the statistic is, the scary part is the number is probably a lot higher because underreporting is a big issue in the API community. Many people deny its very existence, and there are Asian languages that do not even have the word rape in their vocabulary. Cultural beliefs and values play an important role in how APIs define domestic violence, and this in turn defines their help-seeking behaviors. Rigid gender roles, religion, family structures, and cultural norms all prevent survivors from coming forward and reporting. And while I can only speak on behalf of this community that I represent, I know that sexual violence affects and manifests itself in every culture in various ways. Different groups have different obstacles they have to overcome in coming forward about violence they have experienced, but no person's story is any less important. This is why it is crucial that when people do report, they are met with trauma-informed as well as culturally informed peace officers who can help them navigate the system while keeping in mind certain cultural level challenges that these survivors have to overcome in coming forward. Legislation like House Bill 282 and events like these are so important in expanding the training and conversation around sexual violence and making the dialogue more inclusive of all the different communities in our wonderful state. By having trained officials in positions of power, we as a community, as leaders, as advocates and friends, not only make survivors feel like their identity and their story matters, but we make sure that every survivor knows that, that the conversation about sexual violence pertains to them. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we will hear from Riley Trotter from Not on My Campus, and then we will open up for questions.
Hi, my name is Riley Trotter. I'm a junior at UT, and I'm the president of the Sexual Assault Prevention Organization Not on My Campus. I'm learning to code, and I'm an aspiring surgeon. I'm also a survivor. I'm so fortunate to be at the University of Texas, where the Title IX office, as well as the on-campus resources available to me, made me feel supported as a survivor and helped me through one of the hardest periods of my life. I was able to get a free SAFE exam, counseling, and options for reporting without feeling judged or blamed or disbelieved. I maintained my autonomy and never lost control of myself or my story. I am lucky to have been able to get to where I am today, and still, I can find room for improvement in our system. I cannot fathom the idea that other Texas University Title IX systems do not function as mine does. As a student at UT, there are already so many barriers to reporting and to getting help as a survivor. For the students at the universities who don't have such a Title IX support system behind them, it's a wonder any of them report at all. Title IX itself is a very simple law. Steps need to be taken to strengthen it into a comprehensive system for universities, ensuring that all students, regardless of where they attend school, are given the same opportunities for support. It's inherently a form of institutional discrimination if these students aren't given equal opportunities. Senator Huffman has filed SB 212, which will allow universities to report incidents of sexual assault, therefore gathering data on the incidents without disclosing information about survivors. As a survivor who is concerned about maintaining my confidentiality, I chose not to file a report. However, if I had the option to have a record of my sexual assault on file and validated without putting myself or the power over my experience in jeopardy, I absolutely would have taken it. Getting accurate data on campus sexual assault is absolutely essential to solving the problem, and this bill would take steps towards making that process easier. Likewise, Representative Nyave's bill, HB 617, will also help universities by running a study to gain a better understanding of the barriers to reporting and, as a result, take steps to improve university reporting systems. Again, these bills only work if every school has a well-defined system for addressing sexual assault. That is why I'm absolutely in support of SB 585, which Senator Watson filed to create a Texas 9. This bill would require all Texas campuses to address sexual assault and sexual harassment and create a just and safe investigative process for their students. It also contains guidelines to ensure campus police are trauma-informed and to provide survivors counseling and academic support. It's appalling that these resources are not already in place at all Texas universities. The adoption of these policies could only benefit students, their health, and their academic achievements, and they must be adopted immediately if we want to continue to make progress on the issue of campus sexual assault. I implore you to think about the survivors and about the potential survivors at these universities when considering these bills. Students deserve equal opportunity to achieve academic success, and unfortunately, campus sexual assault prevents that. Survivors often feel like their voices are not heard in politics. Thank you, Senator Watson, for letting survivors like me know that someone is listening. Thank you.
Well, I'll say that as I have done more and more work in this area, I continue to be moved by the survivors, the strength and the courage of the people that are willing to take a step up and let people know their stories, the groups that form to make sure that there's strong advocacy. So I want to say thank you to all of the courageous people that are here today to be part of this. I think we are making great progress, but I want to be clear about how I say this. We are making progress because of the survivors and the people that are willing to speak out on this issue. I want to say thank you again to my colleagues that have joined us here today, Chairman Perry, Chairman Zerwas, Representative Howard, District Attorney Margaret Moore, but also some that, because there's a lot going on in this building right now, that aren't with us, but you've heard mentioned. Chairwoman Nelson, Chairwoman Huffman, Representative Niave, Representative Mijares, and I'll miss somebody in there. But let me say something about what you're hearing on that. You've heard the word bipartisan used time and time again. The momentum that we have that has been created by the powerful voices, the courageous voices of the survivors, is creating bipartisan agreement on how we need to address this issue. And that's why you hear the names you hear of people that care deeply about this and are all moved by it. So with that, let me open it up for questions. Again, I want to emphasize that this is about those who are here advocating on behalf of these bills. So I would ask that you direct your questions to those who have spoken to you or others that might be able to answer the question.
Senator, in this cluster, in this package of bills that we're talking about, one of the things that I have heard so often from the survivors is that they have voiced concern, and the concern has been repressed. Probably one of the greatest examples of that is what happened last week with the diocese releasing a list of credibly accused clergy members. Some did get referred to law enforcement, some did not. Is there anything in the package of legislation that we're talking about that has been introduced that goes after organizations that shield abusers, protects abusers, represses that information of getting out regarding those abusers?
Well, does anybody you wanna start, or anybody else wanna address that specifically? I'm happy to do it, okay. I just, again, I was hoping we would keep this on the survivors as opposed to the members of the legislature, but I'm happy to address that. Most of the legislation is directed right now at specific instances of things that might happen on campus. We do have legislation relating to, and we'll probably have additional legislation relating to statutes of limitation, particularly in instances where the statute would be told if, for example, a rape kit had not been tested. So yeah, there would be, but in the very specific instances that you referred to last week, there's not specific legislation that is directed at that.
Ms. Trotter, let me bring you up, and you address that. It seemed like, in your case, did you feel like that the reason why you didn't file was because you felt like it wasn't going to go anywhere?
In my case, when I was assaulted, I was a freshman and very new on campus, and at that point, I was really not ready to fully embrace the fact that I was a survivor, and I didn't want to have anything interfere with my college experience. Although there are lots of reporting processes available to UT students, it is, as has been mentioned, a very strenuous process. It can affect your classes, overall, your social life, your academic achievements, and that was just not something that I felt particularly prepared for. As I've learned more, I think I've become a lot more open to the reporting process, and although there is a lot of room for improvement, I have gotten close with a lot of people in our UT Title IX office, and I absolutely respect them and trust them, and I don't see any huge problems with them. So I don't know if that specifically answers your question. I kind of went in a circle around that, but
It's up to you. You did awesome.
That means she can run for office anytime. The one thing I would add to that is that it's very important that we respect the individual, and we don't jump to an assumption that in every instance the same way something ought to be done in the same way each time and every time. Part of the effort that the members that you have here with you and the others are attempting to do is create processes that are set up so that individuals can make decisions themselves, and that those processes will empower them to be in a position to make those decisions. There will be instances, as has been mentioned, where some organization or group isn't reporting. And there's going to be a debate, I think, about how best to make sure that in those instances somebody can report, and to whom would they report if they want to have something prosecuted. Those decisions will need to be made, but that's part of the reason you prepare with some of this legislation. You prepare with trauma-informed training of the people that we're coming in contact with. So once again, you're strengthening the system for the individual to be able to make individual decisions. Other questions? Well, if there aren't any, let me say again my deepest thanks to the people that have joined us here today. Thank you for being willing to make your voice heard. Thank you for speaking up on behalf of everyone who needs to have a voice. And then I'll say again to my colleagues that have joined us here today, thank you for making this what I think will be an extremely positive legislative session. Thank you all very much for being here.